The fluorescent lights flickered in the empty corridor as Trevor Walsh tightened the final fitting on the ruptured pipe. It was 11:30 on a Tuesday night, 15 floors up in Hamilton Tower, the heart of executive country, where men in tailored suits made choices that reshaped lives. Trevor wasn't one of them. He was the plumber they called when something broke after hours, as unnoticed as the pipes hidden behind the walls. He reached for his toolbox when a scream ripped through the silence, raw, panicked, full of terror. Then it stopped. Absolute quiet. The sound had come from the executive restroom down the hall, the one just beyond Vanessa Crawford's corner office. His phone buzzed. Ruby's goodnight message, sent from Harris's place. 7 years of struggling to keep her fed, protected, steady. 7 years of staying invisible, keeping his head down. The hallway stretched before him like a canyon. Behind that restroom door, someone was in danger. If he walked away, he stayed farther. If he stepped forward, everything could fall apart. His grip tightened around the wrench. Some choices ruin a man no matter what he does. Trevor's worn boots echoed as he moved toward the door. 7 years of staying unnoticed in buildings just like this, and still that scream rang in his ears, the kind that came when someone had no options left. Ruby's face flashed in his mind. Missing teeth, wild curls, a smile that believed her dad could fix anything. What would she think if he turned his back? He pushed the door open. The scene inside froze like a photograph. 2 men in expensive suits. One had a woman pinned against the marble counter, the other clutched a stack of documents. The woman was Vanessa Crawford. He recognized her from the building directory. Her arm was twisted behind her back, her blouse torn at the shoulder. Her eyes locked onto his, wide with desperation. The man restraining her, Brett Morrison, recovered first. Young, polished, used to power. Wrong floor, he said smoothly. Move along. Trevor didn't budge. He stood in the doorway, wrench in hand. The second man, Scott Hendress, shifted uneasily. Brett's voice hardened. I said move. His grip on Vanessa tightened. She winced. Let her go, Trevor said. His voice came out rough. Brett laughed. Do you know who you're talking to? My father owns 40% of this company. One complaint and you're finished. Think carefully before you play hero. Every word hit like a punch. Brett was right. One call and Trevor would lose everything. Rent, food, Ruby's school fees. Vanessa's eyes met his again. Silent, begging. His fingers clenched around the wrench. I'm going to say this once more. Let her go. Brett shoved Vanessa away and stepped toward Trevor. Trevor moved forward too, placing himself between them, not attacking, just blocking. You've made a massive mistake, Brett hissed. We were conducting business. You assaulted me. He raised his voice. Scott, call security. We have an intruder. The trap snapped shut. You were forcing her to sign something, Trevor said. That's assault. And I have proof you broke in with a weapon, Brett replied, nodding at the wrench. The door burst open. 2 security guards rushed in. Brett's face twisted into fear. Thank God. This man came in threatening us. Frank, the older guard, studied Trevor with tired understanding. He'd seen scenes like this before. That true? Frank asked. Trevor looked at Vanessa, hoping she'd speak. She stared at the floor. Whatever Brett held over her still worked. I heard someone in trouble, Trevor said. I came to help. The younger guard stepped closer. Drop the wrench. Trevor lowered it slowly. I want to press charges, Brett snapped. He assaulted me and Miss Crawford. Vanessa looked at Trevor for a long moment. When she spoke, her words were careful. There was a misunderstanding. Mr. Walsh heard something and came to check. No one intended harm. Not the full truth, but not a lie. Frank narrowed his eyes. So no one's hurt, and no one wants to file a report. I want him arrested, Brett barked. For what exactly? Frank asked calmly. Miss Crawford says it was confusion. Silence stretched. A formal report meant questions about what Brett and Scott were doing in a women's restroom after midnight. Brett hesitated. Just get him out. He's fired. Blacklisted. The guards escorted Trevor out. As they waited for the elevator, Frank spoke quietly. That was stupid. Also brave. But bravery doesn't pay rent. Trevor leaned against the wall. By morning, he'd be unemployed. Rent due in 9 days. Ruby needed shoes. One moment of doing the right thing had detonated his life. His phone rang later in his truck. Unknown number. Mr. Walsh. This is Vanessa Crawford. We need to talk. Your friend made it clear. He's not my friend, she said. What you saw was complicated. But I'll make it right. When I do, I'll need you to tell the truth. The truth already cost me everything. I know, she said softly. Please trust me. Just for now. She hung up. Trevor sat in the dark, unsure what came next. The next morning, he drove Ruby to school with a forced smile. She talked about books while he calculated numbers. 300 in savings, rent due soon. By noon, the calls came. Hamilton Tower terminated his contract. 5th Street cancelled. By 3, 4 jobs were gone. Brett moved fast. Harris showed up that night with food and beer. You're a hero and an idiot, he said. Ruby stays with me. You too. I can't. I'm not asking. I'm offering. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Odd jobs barely covered groceries. They gave notice on the apartment and moved into Harris's spare room. Ruby cried quietly. School became harder. Kids whispered. She came home with red eyes. Vanessa called during the second week. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, Mercer Street coffee shop. She sat in a back booth with folders spread out. This is what they tried to force me to sign, she said. 15% of my shares. Combined with Brett's father, they'd push me out. She showed him the documents. Fake embezzlement charges. Then the proof. Brett and Scott had stolen $800,000 over 18 months. I need a witness, she said. You. If I testify, they go to prison, and I can offer you head of facilities. $75,000. Benefits. The board meeting erupted when she laid everything out. Trevor told his story. Brett broke. 3 months later, Trevor stood in Hamilton Tower again, this time in a pressed shirt. Facilities director. A real salary. Stability. Ruby stopped getting bullied. She smiled more. Talked about becoming a lawyer. One evening, eating ice cream as the sun set, she asked, being good is more important than being safe, right? Trevor pulled her close. That's right. For the first time in 7 years, he could breathe, not because life was perfect, but because courage had mattered. And that was enough. Life didn't become easier just because Trevor Walsh had chosen to do the right thing. If anything, it became more complicated in quieter, more dangerous ways. The kind of danger that didn't scream or grab you by the collar, but smiled politely and waited for you to lower your guard. 3 months into his new position at Hamilton Tower, Trevor still woke before dawn. Old habits didn't disappear just because his title had changed. He'd sit at the small kitchen table in Harris's apartment, coffee cooling beside him, reviewing maintenance logs while the city outside slowly came alive. The work was cleaner now, emails instead of grease, spreadsheets instead of pipes, but the responsibility weighed heavier. When something broke now, it wasn't just an inconvenience. It could mean someone got hurt. Or worse. Ruby noticed the difference long before he admitted it to himself. She'd catch him staring into space, jaw tight, fingers drumming against the table. One evening, as she colored at the coffee table, she looked up and asked him why he looked sad even when he smiled. I'm not sad, he said automatically. She narrowed her eyes in a way that reminded him painfully of her mother. You're thinking too loud. That made him laugh, a real one, surprised out of him. He reached over and tapped her nose with his finger. Guess I am. You're not going to lose this job, are you? She asked quietly. The question landed heavier than any accusation. No, he said, then corrected himself. I don't plan to. Ruby nodded, satisfied, and went back to coloring. For her, plans were promises. At work, the emails started piling up. Polite requests at first, suggestions framed as efficiency, Cutbacks described as optimization. Trevor read every line carefully, feeling a familiar tightening in his chest. Deferred maintenance. Reduced staffing during night shifts. Outsourcing inspections to third-party vendors with questionable credentials. He pushed back. Documented concerns. Attached photos. Quoted regulations. The responses came slower, cooler. Meetings got rescheduled. Decisions happened without him. One afternoon, while reviewing blueprints in his office, he noticed a discrepancy in the fire suppression layout on the 12th floor. The system had been downgraded on paper, marked as updated, but the physical equipment didn't match the report. Someone had signed off without doing the work. Trevor closed the file and leaned back in his chair. For a moment, he saw that restroom again. Marble, papers, a woman's eyes pleading silently. He reopened the file and started digging. The deeper he went, the uglier it got. Missing funds, shell vendors, maintenance budgets rerouted into consulting fees. Different names this time, but the same machinery. Corruption didn't vanish, it adapted. That night, his phone rang while he was helping Ruby with math homework. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Trevor Walsh. Mr. Walsh. The voice said smoothly. This is Daniel Price from Corporate Oversight. We'd like to discuss your recent reports. When? Tomorrow morning. 8 sharp. The line went dead. Trevor stared at the phone long after the screen went dark. Ruby looked up. Bad call. Important call, he said. You finish number 7. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on him. He forced a smile. The meeting the next morning was cordial in the way sharks are calm before they bite. 3 men. Crisp suits. Careful words. They thanked him for his diligence, praised his integrity, then gently suggested he might be overstepping the scope of his role. We value your experience, Price said, folding his hands. But there's a balance between safety and practicality. Safety isn't practical, Trevor asked. Price smiled thinly. Safety is expensive. Trevor left the room knowing exactly where this was heading. That evening, Harris poured him a beer without asking. You've got that look again. Which one? The one that says trouble followed you home. Trevor told him everything. Harris listened, jaw tight, eyes dark. They'll come for you, Harris said when he finished. Not loud, quiet, paper cuts. I know, worth it. Trevor thought of Ruby, asleep in the next room. Yeah, the first retaliation came as an audit. Then a performance review flagged for concerns. Then a notice placing him on temporary administrative leave pending investigation. Ruby took it better than he did. Does that mean you're home more? She asked. For a bit, he said. She smiled. Good, you can come to my school play practice. He swallowed. I wouldn't miss it. Vanessa called 2 days later. She sounded tired, but sharp as ever. They're trying to isolate you, she said. Classic move. I figured. Good, because the city inspector just requested full access to our records. They found your report compelling. Trevor closed his eyes. Relief and fear tangled together. So what now? Now, she said, you wait. And you don't back down. Waiting was harder than fighting. The days stretched. Money tightened again. Old anxieties crept back. Trevor caught himself counting cans in the pantry, calculating weeks the way he used to. Ruby sensed it. One night, as he tucked her in, she grabbed his sleeve. Dad, yeah, kiddo, if something bad happens, we'll still be together, right? He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled her close. Always, she nodded, trusting him completely. That trust scared him more than any threat. The investigation exploded faster than anyone expected. The city released a preliminary report citing systemic negligence and intentional misrepresentation. Names surfaced. Resignations followed. The news trucks returned to Hamilton Tower. Trevor was called in to testify. Standing in front of microphones felt stranger than facing down Brett Morrison ever had. There was no villain glaring at him now, no clear enemy. Just questions. Cameras. The weight of knowing his words mattered. He told the truth. Calmly. Plainly. Afterward, He stood outside the building, hands in his pockets, watching the reporters pack up. Vanessa joined him. "You did good," she said. "I just said what I saw." She studied him. "That's rarer than you think." The board dissolved. Oversight took control. Trevor was reinstated, then promoted again, this time officially tasked with safety compliance across all properties. The raise helped. The benefits helped. But what mattered most was the silence that followed. The phone stopped buzzing with threats. The shadows pulled back. One evening, months later, Trevor sat in the audience of a small school auditorium, heart pounding as Ruby stepped onto the stage. She stumbled over one line, laughed, kept going. When the curtain fell, she ran straight to him. "Did you see me? I saw everything," he said, eyes wet. Walking home, ice cream melting in their hands, Ruby skipped ahead, then turned back. "Dad, yeah, I think being brave is like fixing stuff," she said. "It's messy, and sometimes you get hurt, but if you don't do it, things just break worse." Trevor stopped walking. He knelt and looked at her, really looked. At the strength in her small shoulders. At the kindness that hadn't been crushed. "You're right," he said softly. They sat on a bench as the sun dipped below the buildings. The city hummed around them, imperfect and alive. For the first time in a long time, Trevor didn't feel like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Life wasn't safe. It never had been. But it was honest. And for him, for Ruby, that was enough.